Hello everyone, this is POW Ponder on Weather. I have an important update today with some brutal cold coming out west with feet of snow and who all sees a white Christmas. So if you're new to the channel, click the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. Good morning, everyone. Happy winter solstice out there. This is the official first day of winter. And man, it's going to be coming in with a vengeance in places out west. Let me go over what we're talking about this morning on the overall 500 millibars so you can really kind of see how all this is going to evolve over the next week or two. So here's the setup this morning. We talked about this surface cyclone that's setting up over the Gulf that actually issued a tornado watch down here in portions of Sarasota and Naples. I retweeted the tornado watch on my Twitter page, so you can go check that out. But man, you have to look out for some possible tornadoes, unfortunately, between now and 10 o'clock for portions of southern Florida here. But you can see out here, we've got some, the ridge going to be building back in, coming in from the west and moving east over time. And then by the time we get into Christmas Day, you can actually see there's a lot of cold air starting to build. There's been plenty of cold air building up in Alaska and up in Canada for a long time now. And now we're seeing the beginning signs of some of that sinking southward. And man, it's really going to come in a big way. We're going to start to see the initial impacts off the Pacific Northwest starting around Christmas Day, with some colder anomalies filtering in out west. But there is a small window actually for places in New England where they could actually see a white Christmas, and especially for a couple days after Christmas, because look at the boundary here. We've got the really cold air starting to build out here in the Pacific Northwest. This is around the 27th time frame, so this is after Christmas now, so a lot more colder anomalies starting to build out westward. But you can see the blue line here where all the cold air is going to be in place is pretty much locked up into the Pacific Northwest, but there is subtle hints that some of that could sneak into parts of New England and bringing them a snowstorm. But for the rest of the country, you're going to be pretty much well above average, especially for Christmas and the days leading to after Christmas. But as we get into January 1st, man, it really gets serious, guys, out west. We got brutal cold starting to build and really start to amplify and really start to sink south into much of our western states here, with that cold just locked in place, and the rest is pretty much above average. So we're going to see extreme in temperatures where you're going to be seeing 20-30 degrees above average and 20 to 30 degrees below average temperatures. So that's what we have on the table coming up in the week or two ahead. And as we get into that January 5th timeframe, we start to see subtle hints of some of that cold air finally releasing from the Pacific Northwest and our western states and starting to slowly start to shift into our central and eventually getting into our eastern states as we go into that second week of January. But let me take a look at what I'm looking at here and how all this is going to set up. This is the MJO, which is your Mann-Julie oscillation. This is the Australian view. The access model consists of 33 members, and I really like this. We've been stuck in phase 6 where we've been well above average. Now it's finally moving to phase 7. And look what's coming. The cold pretty much is locked, and it's almost verbatim what phase 7 looks like or where all the cold is going to be. But look what happens. It really starts to slow down in phase 7 right around the 24th, right around Christmas, right? And it stays in phase 7 all the way through January the 8th. So we've got about a 10-day window into the Pacific Northwest where we could be seeing some brutal cold and some extreme anomalies where we have well above average temperatures out in the central and eastern 2/3 of the United States, and then well below average temperatures out here in the Pacific Northwest. But after we get past the January 8th timeframe, it finally gets into phase 8 and phase 1 and slowly start to shift some of that colder air and it starts to share with other parts of the U.S., especially into the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. So that's what's on the table. So let's break this down. This is your Pacific North American oscillation. It's solidly negative. And man, look at that. This is really rare to see something of like this, a -6 deviation. That is an indication of extremely cold air going to be sinking from the higher elevations down to the surface. And we could be talking about days and days and days of below freezing temperatures, and if not some negative temperatures on the table as we get deeper into the end of the month. So let's break this down. Let's take a look at the overall 5-day averages of the latest model depiction, and you can actually see where all the warmer anomalies are going to be for the next 5 days. We have a ridge starting to build, really amplifying, really going to be locked and loaded over the central 2/3 of the United States, and bringing those well above average temperatures for Christmas and, Christmas Day for much of the South here, where we got some of the colder anomalies well to the north continuing to build out here into the Pacific Northwest. But as we get into that 26 to that end of the year time frame, so this is the next 5 days. So from the 26th to the 31st time frame, look at that deep purple Arctic air really starting to sink southward. We have a sharp gradient. Let me take you back. Remember when the Pacific Northwest was seeing some record high temperatures back in June? We're talking 116 degrees in Portland over in Oregon there. And we're like, man, that is some crazy stuff. And then while Texas was just baking in, really mild weather, right? I mean, they was like, man, this is not even like summertime, So we saw the extreme anomalies, and now potentially on the table, we have the complete opposite, where we have well above average temperatures out here in Texas, and then well below average temperatures, and if not some record cold temperatures potentially on the table as we get into the end of December, but especially as we go into those first 5 days of January, because man, it really starts to lock and loaded. I think once it starts snowing, you leave a snowpack on the ground and that'll amplify the temperatures. Man, it's got all layers of the atmosphere, plenty of cold, and we got some deep Arctic air really starting to intrude into the Northwest, and we're looking at 20 and 30 degrees below average temperature anomalies, not just for one day. This is over a 5-day period. And you can see the sharp temperature gradient of those 20 and 30 degrees almost above average temperature anomalies, and that extremely cold, brutal Arctic air building and really amplifying and setting in and locking in into the Pacific Northwest. So let's break this down. So who all could possibly see a white Christmas? There's really not many. But out here in the Pacific Northwest, you start to see the beginning signs of some colder air starting to sink a little bit further south. So yes, places like Portland, Maine could start to see the transition of that atmospheric river of just rain actually transfer to some snow. You actually saw some snow just yesterday. But we could be looking at, or just the other day, we could be looking at more snow really starting to build. And this would be the beginning stages of potentially what's to come the 10 days following that. So look where the snowfall could lie for Christmas Day, well to the north, because you got that boundary, you have the ridge building down to the south. But we could have a small window in portions of New England here, where we could start to see some snow starting to fly around Christmas Eve night and getting into Christmas Eve. It's not out of the question for places in upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, portions of Massachusetts, going into Maine, to start to see some a white Christmas on Christmas Day and have some snow actually falling. But I think you even have a better chance as we get the day after Christmas, where we have more snow building out west, and not just the interior regions. We're talking coastal regions, Seattle, Portland, those areas, we're talking snow now in those regions, as it's going to be cold enough to be able to snow in those regions, and that colder air just continues to train along this boundary here, and really kind of amplifies into portions of New England, where we could be picking up some heavier snowfall totals the day after Christmas. And let's look at some of those totals on Christmas Day, potentially for the Northeast. And there is that window. This is what Christmas morning potentially could look like. Now, to qualify for a white Christmas, you either have an inch of snow on the ground or snowing, right? And so there's a potential here in the northern PA and upstate New York, and getting into Massachusetts, Connecticut here, portions of Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine could see, but a white Christmas in these areas, portions of Michigan here potentially. But as we get into that 27th time frame, to add the 26th and the 27th snow compounding, now we're talking a lot more snow on the table, with that colder anomalies in place, and that snow band really locking over northern PA, upstate New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Boston, potentially into the 26th, the 27th time frame, Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Maine. So some of these totals could be pretty good over that 26th and 27th time frame. So, and if we break this down and go all the way into the end of the year, we've got more cold building and sinking south. We're still talking snow in Washington and Oregon. So I think it's days and days and days of this, as this cold really starts to build and amplify out west, and then it starts sinking southward into Nevada, places into California. The Sierra Nevada just gets crushed with feet, if not 10 or 15 or 20 feet of snow into the mountain regions. So there's a lot of snow, guys, coming into the west, and we'll break this down for you. But check this out. Look at the 500 HPA temperatures. This is about 18,000 feet up in the altitudes. But look at that extreme anomaly we're looking at by the time we get into that December 30th timeframe. That is some serious cold really starting to build. What that equates to is about negative 46 below Celsius. That's about 49, 50 below zero, guys, Fahrenheit. That is some serious cold. Now, granted, that's 18,000 feet up, but that just gives you an indication that is some serious Arctic air building, and Arctic air sinks. It sinks, and it's very dense, and it's coming, guys. I mean, there's a lot of cold air building. But let's break this down into some of the ensemble member guidance of the latest EPS of, say, Portland, right? So I broke this down. This is the average means. This is over 51 members of the European model, and this breaks it down of where these average means could be for as we get into December 20th. But once we get past December 25th timeframe, we could be looking at days and days and days potentially not even getting above freezing in places like Portland, Maine. And what's really interesting, some of these ensemble member guidance, about 20% of them actually have some portions of Portland potentially going negative. Now, your all-time coldest temperature ever is 2 below zero back in 1950, which was another interesting year because 1949 and 1950 had back-to-back La Niñas like we're having now, and they had some serious cold, and that's where some of these all-time record colds happen in places into the Pacific Northwest. And there's about 20% ensemble member guidance right now actually showing that you could even potentially drop below zero. That is not off the table. And look at that. That's the extreme of 11 below zero. Now, what's interesting is some of these, back when you had that extreme heat of 116 degrees, we started to see beginning signs of that. And everybody was like, that's not going to happen. That is not going to happen. Well, guess what? It happened. And we could be looking at the extreme opposite of that potentially in about a 10-day time frame that may be coming for the Pacific Northwest. So let's break this down into the overall operational guidance, where, yes, as this is the latest GFS, kind of gives you an idea of where some of these temperatures could be. Yeah, once we get past Christmas, we could be looking at days and days and days. I mean, by the time we get in the end of the month, the high of 21. It's not going to get above freezing potentially for days. And we got snow on the ground and snowing, a little bit of snow every single day. Now let's break this down to Spokane, Washington. Kind of the same deal. Look at these ensemble member guidance potentially going negative by the time we go into the end of the month. And there, I mean, we had all-time record lows. Now, their all-time record low is 30 below zero back in 1888. And some of these members, look at that, negative 25, negative 28, negative 26. Now, that is an extreme outlier. But we are seeing some ensemble member guidance showing, not just negative, but potentially getting close to record cold, potentially, combining with that snowpack on the ground. And let's break this down for the operational view. Yeah, you can see the 27th, high of 13, high of 4, high of 3. I mean, below zero, negative 13 on December 30th. Some serious cold, guys. And let's break this down to Seattle. I mean, even Seattle, their all-time record low, January 31st, 1950, 0 degrees. Look where we could potentially be at 6 degrees with snow on the ground by the time we get in December 30th, right? That's the potential that's on the table, and widespread snow. This is the latest European snowfall potential totals for the next 10 days, and we're talking feet of snow for the Pacific Northwest. And all the cold air, like I showed you, is bottled up in the Pacific Northwest. The rest into the central and eastern 2/3 are going to be well above average temperature anomalies. So that is the extremeness that's on the table with this particular system that's coming in. Now let's break this down of potential snowfall totals for the next 10 days through December 30th. Vancouver, about 6 inches. Seattle, about 8 inches. I mean, you average about 6 for the entire season. Now, some years, like I think, 1968, 69, had 67 inches. That's the all-time record snow. But, this is over a 10-day time frame. We could be just getting started with this, right? Winter just started, right? Portland, Maine, 15 inches of snow. 15 inches of snow, guys. And Portland, Oregon, over the next 10 days. That's the potential on the table when you average 4, right? I mean, so you're talking to combine with the snowpack on the ground with those really cold temperature anomalies settling in. Yeah, we could be looking at some serious snow on the table too. Spokane, Washington, 9 inches. La Grande, 18 inches. Let's just, kind of show some of these snowfall totals. Rosebud, 17 inches. Medford, 20 inches. That is a lot of snow, guys. I mean, that's potentially coming. And we go further south, you get into places like Redding, about 1 inch. But all those, that is just serious snow into the Sierra Nevada, no question, of feet of snow. We move further southward. We go into Reno, about 18 inches of snow. We go into Salt Lake City, about 15 inches. Now, this is over a 9-day period for the next 9 days. And a lot of this doesn't even start until about Christmas Day, and especially after Christmas. But yeah, look at all the snow that could be flying that's on the table. We go further south in the higher elevations, Flagstaff about 8 inches, right? And it's a sharp gradient. Then we go back up to the north, Missoula about 1 foot, Great Falls 4 inches, Idaho Falls 7 inches. But down to Preston, 27 inches. This is a lot of snow. In Boise, 21 inches of snow. Yeah, this is a lot of snow that's on the table. Into Billings, about 3 inches. We sink a little bit further south into Jackson, 25 inches of snow. So you can definitely see some of these snowfall totals that are on the table over the next 10 days, and there's a sharp gradient, just like what we've seen. It really starts to dry up once it starts hitting Denver, about 2 inches, but it's all in the foothills. So we're locked and loaded in this same kind of pattern for at least another 7 or 10 days before things start to shift a little bit further and then really start to share into our other places, to some of that colder air once the MJO moves into those colder phases of 8 and 1 after about January the 8th time frame. But look at some of these total snowfall totals up to the north in Minot, 8 inches, Grand Forks, 7 inches, West Fargo about 5 inches. So you can definitely kind of see as we traverse across going into Thunder Bay, 7 inches. So I'm not going to read every single one of them, but Minneapolis, 3 inches. So you can kind of give an idea of what's potentially on the table for the off places out west in the Pacific Northwest, and those well above average temperatures for the rest of you guys. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do share this video on social media. Let everybody know this potential extreme cold that could be coming for the West and the Pacific Northwest. Thanks for watching. Do like this video. Definitely subscribe to my channel and catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.